Are you one of the millions of homes that has a pet as part of the family? Are you interested in sustainable living and a sustainable home, including what that might mean in terms of pets and their companionship? Well, then join me as I speak next with Joanne Dwyer, the Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility and Sustainability at PetSmart, the largest specialty retailer in North America and a brand who will do anything for pets. We'll talk about these topics and more about sustainable living and the world of pets in the home. Hi everyone, Douglas Sabo here, or at Green Living Doug across social media. Welcome back to the Sustainable Life channel. For those of you who follow this channel, you know my passion for talking about sustainability, sustainable living, particularly topics like sustainability in the home. And we often talk about apparel or food or other household items like furniture. But a topic that I have probably undercovered is sustainability around that other member of the family pet. And so today we are actually joined by a very special guest, a longtime friend and colleague, Joanne Dwyer, who's Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility and Sustainability at PetSmart, the largest specialty retailer in North America. Joanne, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Doug.
Yeah. So first, tell our audience a little bit about PetSmart.
Sure. PetSmart, as you said, is the largest specialty retailer for pets. We are in North America, so also in Canada and the US, and we have also omni-channel. We own a B corporation, which I think a lot of people don't know, called Only Natural Pet, which is a pet brand that is really focused on all of the wonderful things tied to sustainability, from carbon neutral kibble to sustainable packaging. And so we have a lot of opportunity to learn within this industry because of our size and scale, and also because of this wonderful brand that we own.
That's great. Well, speaking of size and scale, help us understand what is the size of scale of pet ownership and pet companionship in the United States.
There's about 66% of households in the US that own pets, and during the pandemic, we saw a huge increase in that. And one of the things that's been really interesting is that the majority of pet households have dogs and then cats. But what we found in the pandemic is that people, especially people who were living in big cities or who weren't maybe in really large homes, started to invest more in smaller pets, specialty pets, things like turtles and birds and fish and guinea pigs and hamsters. And PetSmart never has sold cats or dogs, but we do sell specialty pets and of course everything that you would need for all of the pets in your household.
Right. Well, help our audience who's very much interested in sustainable living, help our audience understand what does it mean about sustainability and pets? What are the topics of intersection?
It's such an interesting topic, and I would say that in the pet industry we're a little bit lagging when it comes to thinking about sustainability. So first and foremost, there is the problem of packaging, and most pet consumables come in packaging that is not recyclable. It's this multi-layer packaging. Treat bags, pet food bags, those things are not recyclable. And so there's a lot of work being done in the industry right now to try to figure out take back of that packaging, and also trying to think about how you use recycled content in making better flexible packaging that would be recyclable. There's also things like cat litter that are, again, disposable and extremely difficult, but you can use really organic content when you're making things like that. And lots of plastics in the form of cat litter boxes outside of even packaging. So things, leashes and leads and collars, things that are inside dog beds. And so there are so many unsustainable materials that have traditionally been used in a lot of materials we make for pet products. And so we're seeing a real evolution in trying to think about the material use. The other area that we think a lot about is pet waste. And I know this is not a very...
Who doesn't?
Yeah, I know, right? But if you think about it, this is a huge problem, in our country. Obviously, human waste is disposed of in different ways, but most of us are putting our pet waste in a landfill. And it's in a bag. And so there's a lot of work, and actually in Canada, there's a lot of work being done around composting pet waste, which is a really interesting topic. That's not something that we're regulated to be able to do here in the US, but it's something that we're trying to find a way to solve for.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to go up in the life cycle from waste topic to talk about the food topic, about sustainability of pet food. Is that a big focus in the industry?
Absolutely. So when you hear about regenerative agriculture within the human food space, it is an interesting fact. 25% of all protein consumed in the U.S. is consumed by cats and dogs, which is not something that I knew. And so that's a huge amount of protein being consumed. And when you think about how we're sourcing all of those proteins, we need to think about the fact that the scarcity of protein may exist for humans, and obviously that's going to exist for pets. Most of the protein we use in pet consumables does come from human food waste and or extras or not pretty parts of a chicken if it's not like a heart shape like you would eat at a popular restaurant. And we get that. And so we're thinking a lot about how do we partner with others across the food supply chain to think about regenerative agriculture for the proteins used for pets. And then there's also a lot of work being done on alternative protein, things like insect proteins, black fly larvae, or cricket protein, because obviously from a climate standpoint, you can grow a lot more of that type of protein in smaller spaces and have, better for the planet proteins that you're using for your pet foods.
Right. Are there pets out there who are starting to self-identify as vegans or flexitarian?
I think that the veterinary community would indicate that most pets need protein to live, animal protein or insect protein. And so I haven't seen a lot, especially for cats and dogs, moving away from the more traditional, but there are a lot of sort of emerging plant-based diets that are being tested. I just don't know that they're fully supported yet by the veterinary community.
And that's critical.
Yes.
Does PetSmart have a mix of own brands and then national brands and together in the retail? And do you therefore work with a lot of the national brands on the sustainability journey?
We are really fortunate in the pet industry when you think about our national brand partners, because a lot of the big pet consumable brands are owned by companies like Mars and Nestle that do other things. Hill's is owned by Colgate. And so these really large organizations are excellent partners for us to have, especially when you think about things like climate and our Scope 3 impacts, because they already have science-based targets often and or reduction targets themselves. And obviously their Scope 1 and 2 is then becomes a big part of our Scope 3. And so for me, that's a really big win. About of our portfolio is proprietary brand, which is pretty big in a retail setting. Most of that is in, or much more over indexes in hard goods, things like dog beds and collars and leads. And then within consumables, we are very focused on trying to think about how we can deliver more accessible consumables that have, whether it's, like an RX diet or a science-based diet that is more accessible and affordable to everybody. And I do think it's extremely interesting when you think about sustainability within the pet industry that we do work to make it democratized. We have to democratize sustainability, I think, across all industries. But, at PetSmart, we believe that pets enrich our lives and that everybody should be able to have access to a pet. And the same is true then about product. And so we have to be really conscious about those sustainable offerings being as accessible as everything else that we sell.
That's great, because we do talk on the channel a lot about democratizing access to sustainable living. It shouldn't just be for the affluent and those who can afford, but how do we do it at scale and reach? What about the role of your customers? Do you engage? Do you reach out? Do you educate? What is the role of the customer in PetSmart's eyes?
I think that our customers are very much nature-loving people. Most of the time, people who love pets. We have seen that there's a strong correlation in interest of sustainability with our customers, but also in social impact, if that makes sense. And so a lot of what we do is cause-related. PetSmart Charities is the largest animal welfare organization in North America. We have adoption centers in our stores, but we also do cause-related marketing, and we give our customers the opportunity to donate their treats loyalty points. Since we've started doing that, we've seen a huge rise in the amount of donations that have been made through the Treats program. So I think that the customers are very much interested in social impact. When it comes to sustainability, I think that they aren't even educated enough to understand some of the challenges that they're facing, that, some of these, all of the consumable packaging is not recyclable, for example. I'm not sure that people know that. I think stuff is getting put in the recycle bins even when it's not recyclable. So we have a real opportunity to do consumer education and to bring our customers along on our journey. I think that, what we try to do is think about other like-minded brands that are talking about sustainability to people who shop at PetSmart and may shop at other retailers, and thinking about how, as a retail industry, but also candidly with my peers at Petco and Chewy, how do we start talking to our customers specifically about pet sustainability?
It's terrific to hear the collaboration and
Yes.
the openness, because I think it's so needed.
It's critical.
You mentioned social impact. I believe PetSmart has helped more than 10 million pets find
That's
their
right.
forever homes. Am I close?
That's exactly right. So PetSmart Charities has been traditionally extremely focused on pet adoption, and 10 million pets have been adopted as of just under a year ago, and that number is growing. It is the most pet adoptions done through any animal welfare organization in North America. In addition to that, they have a really strong focus on supporting families during times of disaster. So when you think about the social side of pet ownership within pet families, during times of disaster and or domestic violence, a lot of the time people don't leave home because they cannot bring their pet with them to a shelter environment. And so we work extremely closely with organizations like the Red Cross on disaster readiness and making sure they do not have to leave their pet. And then the same is true in the area of access to veterinary care. So when you think about the DEI side of ESG within the world of pets, pet ownership has traditionally very much in this country skewed to white people, and we're seeing a rise in pet ownership among Hispanic families now, but there's a really large gap then among Asian American, Native American, and African American populations in pet ownership. And so I think it's unique when we think about PetSmart Charities and the work that they're doing. They've invested $100 million in accessible veterinary care, especially in communities of color, not just investing in veterinarians of color, because there are very few of them across this country. So in terms of scholarships and working with the vet schools, but also then in terms of enabling organizations like Emancipet that put practices in communities of lower socioeconomic communities where access to veterinary care is really difficult and challenging.
Wow, well, such important work, such impactful work. So thank you to PetSmart for all the work that is done over the years in that space.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Joanne, for joining us. Well, this has been another episode of a conversation around sustainable living with the innovators in Sustainable Life. I'm Douglas Sabo at Green Living Doug on social media. If you like this content, I can't resist, like and subscribe, and you'll be able to follow more. So thank you again for joining us on the Sustainable Life channel.